Hi, everyone, and welcome to Opera Storytime. My name is Jason Hardy, and I'm the Executive Director of Knoxville Opera. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Opera Storytime. This session is different because it's live, making it possible for you to ask questions during our time together. So you may have questions about the story we read, or about what it's like to work in the performing arts. So today, I'm going to read you a book called The Dog Who Sang at the Opera. Now, this is an especially fun story because it actually really happened on stage at the Metropolitan Opera in 1997. So while you listen to the story, think of any questions you may have for me, and please just type them into the chat box, which should be on this side, might be underneath, depending on what device you're using. Type in any questions, put them in the chat box, and I'll answer them after the story. So, let's get started. Pasha was a beautiful dog, and she knew it. Whenever Pasha and her owner Shirley went for a walk, people turned to look. "My beauty makes me queen," Pasha thought, and stuck her pointed nose high in the air. Shirley worked at the Metropolitan Opera House in New York City, playing the piano and helping the singers learn their music. Operas are plays in which everyone sings instead of talking. One day, she came home very excited. "Pasha, I have wonderful news. We're doing an opera called Manon, and we need a beautiful dog on stage during the big festival scene. You are going to appear at one of the greatest opera houses in the world." Yes, thought Pasha coolly. Of course. The next day, Shirley took Pasha to the Metropolitan Opera House, the Met, for a rehearsal. There were dozens of people on the big stage. There was another dog, too. "What a scruffy thing that is. What could he be doing here?" wondered Pasha, looking down her long Russian nose. "Oh no, he's coming this way." "Hi," panted the little dog. "My name's Sluggo. What's yours?" "My name is Pasha. Miss Pasha to you," she replied, turning her head away. "Have you ever been in an opera before, Miss Pasha?" "No," snapped Pasha, "but I listen on the radio." "Oh, they're great. We've been in 3 of them. My master, Sam, is a clown, and we do tricks together." "A clown dog?" sniffed Pasha. "And what breed of dog are you?" "I'm a mix," Sluggo answered cheerfully. "You're a mutt," barked Pasha. "I was bred by royalty in Europe. Je suis un reine. But you wouldn't understand French. It means I'm a queen." She held her head high. "But it's fun being related to lots of different kinds of dogs," answered Sluggo. "Oh, look over there. That's the director." "The director?" asked Pasha. "He's very important. He tells us all what to do." There was a tug on Sluggo's leash. "Oops, the director's going to talk now. We've got to go. Bye." The director made a speech and told the singers and other performers where to stand. When he saw Pasha, he smiled and patted her head. "You are so well behaved and beautiful. You must stand next to our diva, Manon." "The diva is the biggest star in the opera," Shirley whispered to her. "Good girl, Pasha." Pasha looked at Sluggo smugly. "I told you I was a queen," she said. In the costume room, a lady put a sparkling necklace on Pasha and gave Shirley a long, fancy dress. Pasha noticed that Sluggo was given a particularly silly-looking pointed hat and a ruffle to wear around his neck. The next morning was the dress rehearsal, practicing the opera like a real performance. Everyone loved the big festival scene. As the singers sang, acrobats flipped and twirled behind them, tightrope walkers teetered overhead, and puppets performed on their own small stage. Sam the clown came on in a brightly colored costume with Sluggo right beside him. Sluggo wore his pointed hat and walked on his back legs. Pasha was horrified. Sluggo even jumped through a hoop. Next, Manon sang her big song, which is called an aria, the gavotte. Her voice was the most beautiful sound Pasha had ever heard. But that didn't matter. It seemed to Pasha that all eyes were on her, the glamorous wolfhound in the dazzling necklace. That night, Pasha had a wonderful dream. She was on the stage of the Met in a red dress, singing. She was a diva. Everyone was applauding and cheering, "Brava, Pasha, brava!" Opening night came at last. Shirley and Pasha walked to their places on stage. The conductor raised his baton. The orchestra started to play. The great gold curtain swung open. The audience applauded, and Pasha was thrilled. Manon sang better than ever and much louder than at rehearsals. There was more applause, and people called, "Brava!" Then Manon started to sing the gavotte. She sang, "I walk down the road just like royalty. Everyone looks at me because I am beautiful. My beauty makes me a queen." But that's not the way it is, thought Pasha. I am the queen. Everyone is looking at me. Pasha started to hum along with Manon, quietly at first. Then she began to sing. Shirley gave a little tug at her leash. The conductor looked up. Pasha heard some of the people in the audience giggling and thought excitedly, "It's just like my dream." She sang even louder. She sang, giving it everything she had. The louder she sang, the louder the audience giggled. They love me, thought Pasha. She loved being a diva. Her voice blended with Manon's voice and the glorious sound of the Met Orchestra. There was applause, but Shirley quickly pulled Pasha off the stage before she could even take a bow. All the stagehands were laughing. Shirley was giggling too, but she was upset with Pasha. She knelt beside her, looked into her eyes, and said, "Pasha, Pasha, dogs are not supposed to sing in the opera. Never, ever." The director was not laughing. He told Shirley that Pasha could not be in the opera anymore. No sparkling necklace. The costume lady took it back. While Shirley took off her own costume, Pasha sat down in a dark corner. She had never been in trouble before. She was beautiful. She was perfect. This wasn't supposed to happen. "Are you all right, Miss Pasha?" Pasha closed her eyes and turned away. "This is not a happy time for me. Please, I want to be alone." Sluggo looked at her, huddled in the corner. "I thought you sang beautifully, Miss Pasha." No, please, go." Pasha opened one eye. "You really think so?" "Honest, Miss Pasha, I thought your high notes were better than Manon's." "Spasibo," whispered Pasha, with a slight smile. "What's that mean, Miss Pasha?" "It's Russian for thank you." "You're welcome," answered Sluggo. "That's English for any time." The next day, there was an article in the newspaper about Pasha, the dog who sang at the Met. "You're famous, darling," said Shirley, laughing. The phone did not stop ringing all day. That weekend, all of Shirley's friends, including Sam and Sluggo, were invited to her apartment for a concert. With Shirley at the piano, Pasha sang Mozart. Then she sang to music by the Russian composer Tchaikovsky, and everyone applauded politely. But when she sang the gavotte from Manon, her big number, they all stood and cheered, "Brava, Pasha, brava!" Sluggo waited until all the people had finished fussing over her. Then he came over. "You look beautiful tonight, Miss Pasha." Pasha beamed. "Spasibo," she murmured. "And you sang better than ever," said Sluggo. "I heard Shirley tell Sam that the Paris Opera might be interested in you, Miss Pasha." Oh, Sluggo, you don't have to call me Miss Pasha. I was being silly. Please, call me Pasha. Sluggo's eyes shone. I hear we're going for a walk together, Pasha, tomorrow. Now, Pasha, Sluggo, Sam, and Shirley go for walks together almost every day. But on Saturday afternoons, Pasha curls up in front of the radio and listens to the live broadcasts from the stage of the Metropolitan Opera. She pretends she is there once more, wearing her jeweled necklace, standing beside the star. And as she listens, she remembers what a beautiful voice Manon had for a human. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you haven't already typed in your questions, please go ahead and do so. And while those questions come in, I want to talk about what we can learn from Pasha's story. Besides listening to the director, Pasha got something very important out of her experience at the Met, and that was her best friend, Sluggo. At first Pasha didn't like Sluggo because he was a mutt, and she thought she was better than him. But as the story goes on, Sluggo comforts her and offers her true friendship. And she almost missed out on getting her best friend because she judged him based on how he looked and where he came from. So I want you all to remember this. All that really matters is knowing who you are on the inside and how important it is to be kind and to care for others, particularly when they're different from you. Now, let me get my iPad out here. Let's see if we have any questions. I see Dorothy. That's funny, Dorothy. Good evening, Dorothy. My daughter is named Dorothy. Dorothy and Parker are probably watching me right now, so hello, shout out to the kids. So if you have questions, we'll come back to that. Now, so in our last moments together while we wait for some questions, I'd like to mention that this Saturday, this weekend, April 30th, Knoxville Opera is celebrating our return to the annual Spring Rossini Festival. So come downtown and visit the Kids Zone on Market Square, walk around to see the performances on 5 stages, all within a short walk. Opera by definition is an art form that encompasses all the arts. Music and singing and movement and storytelling. It's visual, it's oral. Well, this weekend, Knoxville Opera will be presenting all the arts with over 700 local artists. So come to the Rossini Festival, enjoy the opportunity to play in Market Square, enjoy a full day of live performances. Let's see if we have any more questions. None at the moment. Well, I will say, if you think of questions afterwards, if you're like me, that's typically what happens. Send us an email. The email address is info@knoxvilleopera.org. Info, I-N-F-O, at knoxvilleopera.org. Send us an email. Be happy to interact with you with any questions about what's going on at Knoxville Opera, about Opera Storytime, a story you'd like for us to read. Just let us know. So let's see. Refresh my screen here. Is using real animals in the opera something that happens all the time? No, actually, as you can imagine, animals are very unpredictable. But there are a few operas that there's an expectation that we will put animals on stage. There's one opera by Giuseppe Verdi called Aida, where they march a whole parade of animals. And depending on how big the stage is, if you were to see this at the Met, you'd see elephants and camels and zebras and all sorts of zoo animals. At a company like ours, we don't have the budget to put that many animals on it, but that can be a very messy and unpredictable situation, as you can imagine. If you've ever been to a parade outdoors, you can imagine sort of how unpredictable the animals could be. But that's a great question. And actually, probably the perfect question for a story such as this, because to my knowledge, the only dog to have a professional appearance on a professional opera stage would be the story that you just heard. What's it like? Okay, our social media. What's it like to put together such a big show at the opera? Another great question. There's a lot that goes into it, and when you go to the opera or any theatrical performance for that matter, you go and sit in the audience. What you see on stage when the curtain goes up is a small fraction of what actually is going on. You've got oftentimes there's an orchestra in the pit, which can have anywhere from 10, 15 to 100 musicians, depending how the size of the pit and the size of the orchestra for that particular opera. You've got all the stage managers, the people that paint the sets and build the sets and hang them and then they come flying down, or pieces that move in. So there are a lot of moving parts that go on behind that, which is why, opera, when I say it does encompass all the arts, you've got everything from the initial rehearsal process to the person that wrote the story, the person that wrote the music, and then the artists learn that, and then stage directors tell the artists where to go as they're putting this all together. And it's kind of a miracle that when it does all come together, you've got so many things that need to happen with such precision in those moments. It's what makes live theater so special. So when you come into the theater and see that, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's usually by the time it's about 3 weeks that when Knoxville Opera artists arrive and we stage it together. They do all their prep work ahead of time, and then it is a very intense period of time to get that final part of the rehearsal process done. I'm scrolling here. Let's see, from Twitter, this is a true story. How would you sum up the moral overlaw? Well, I think we kind of summed it up about, be kind, don't judge, because you can oftentimes find a best friend out of people who aren't like you. It's what makes us all grow, is when we experience things that we're unfamiliar with or meet people who are different from us. Carolyn Hardy. Was Pasha really dragged off the stage in real life? That picture was pretty funny. Yeah, I think during the middle of the aria, she got dragged off stage. So she did make her debut, but then, so she I think at an appropriate point in the aria, she got moved off stage, and that was the end of her debut. So there was a funny exchange after the fact too between Renee Fleming was the singer. I don't know if we mentioned that. So very famous, in her time, the most famous American soprano for sure. So there was a funny back and forth letter that went back and forth where at some point in the opera afterwards, maybe it was between shows, she said, well, it's the dog or me, being sort of a little tongue in cheek, that I think it was so funny and well received that the dog sang on stage. It made for a good operatic story, to be sure. And she was a good sport about it, and they exchanged letters after the fact. And now Pasha has a book about her, so it could be worse than that. I got a couple more minutes if you want to. Oh, look at that. Thank you. Shout out to the family. Well, I'm sure many folks will share this after the fact. So hi to those that join us after the live stream. But I want to take a minute before I sign off. Just remember that, especially a note to all the kids, a word to all the kids, is just, you all have a unique story of your own to tell. So write and draw, sing, paint, dance, and create and play. Not only does it improve your own life experience, but by bringing more beauty into our world, you make our world a better place to live. So I'll leave you with that, and just thank you for sharing this time with me. Be well, everybody.